Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to wrap up this week's theme of songs with more than one language spoken in them, or I suppose sung in them is another way of looking at that. We're going to be looking at the group Ibibio Sound Machine. This is interesting. I don't think I've ever heard of this band before. The song, though, is called Protection from Evil. Let's dive in, see what Ibibio Sound Machine is bringing to the table today. That is a seizure warning, photosensitive people, and immediately already flashing lights, so yeah. Definitely put this in another tab or something, just listen along to it if you are photosensitive. Great instrument choice so far. It's cool that we have a modular synth just out being used. Pretty cool. It's a sick bass tone too. Ooh, bit of an 80s drum thing there. Is that clapping or something? It's definitely a reverb percussion. Yeah. A little bit of atonal noise there. It's interesting, from the drums we get for a little while there, the drums were lining up with the vocal rhythms. What's that instrument called? It's obviously in the lute family, but I don't know its specific name. If anyone can inform me of that. Kind of static sound here, different from the building up that we had seen in prior sections. Rhythmic information from the vocals, and a drop. There's the drop. And see, once again, the drums sort of lining up with the vocal rhythmic ideas. Yeah, very cool. It's a nice genre fusion as well. You know, aside from being multilingual, um, there's a lot of influences in here. I can hear some of the early electronic influences. Names of bands are escaping me, but sort of that 70s and 80s sounds of seeing where you can push electronic sounds in general. Um, there's hip hop in here, a lot of that rhythmic focused idea. There's also, I mean, I guess it kind of plays off of sort of that earlier electronic sound, but a new wave focus on singularity and vibe and building up of ideas kind of sitting within a single sound. It's very groovy, it's electronic. It also has some traditional instrumentation in it too. There is that lute instrument that we saw and heard, and I'm pretty sure I heard some auxiliary percussion stuff, shakers, or I don't know, maybe stuff that you just hit together, maybe not necessarily wood blocks, but something in that vein. And there's just some cool traditional instrumentation that's being played alongside the modern drum kit and the electronic sounds and that super groovy bass tone. And it's an eclectic bunch of instruments and sounds and tones, and they bring it all together in a way that makes sense. And I find that really interesting that there seems to be this width of influence as far as genre and composition and style, but also this vast collection of instrumentation. It's certainly, what's that word? Actually, the word I was thinking of isn't the right word for it. Anyways, I was going to use a word that signifies that there's things outside of the time era that they should have been in. But that's not exactly it. It's more of a smorgasbord of eras and sounds and styles all smashed together from 40 or 50 years and brought together into something that just works. It clicks. It doesn't matter that all these different inspirations and sounds come from different times or even different regions. They found a way to make it all work. They put everything together into the Venn diagram and found where all of it overlapped and said, that's our music, and made a song out of that. It sounds phenomenal. It's groovy. It's catchy. There's some nice melodic lines to it. It sounds great. There's things that would catch the ear of a modern listener. There's things that would catch the ear of someone who likes more traditional folk style music too. It does have progression and movement through it, but it also is hyper focused at specific places. It's focused on compositional progression just as much as it is on atmospheric vibe and exploring a single sound and building an idea out of that. So it's got a little bit of everything for anyone. That's pretty cool. I had to pause to go look up that word because it's been eating at my brain since I was thinking about it. It's anachronism or anachronistic when something is in the wrong time period or era. But that's again not what was going on here. Anyways, getting back to the music. um like I mentioned, there is both movement and progression as well as areas where we just kind of stick to one idea. And we kind of saw that throughout the beginning where we brought the bass in, we brought the drum beat in, we brought the vocals in, and they expanded. We continued to add instrumentation around this. The instruments, the lines that these instruments were playing was adapted. The drums consistently evolved over the course of this entire song. They just refused to sit still, but the bass line progressed as well through this. This was a section that felt more of a midpoint between this, where we do have this constant progression, but it's all in favor of this singular atmosphere. From here, though, we went into something that feels a bit more static and rigid. We kind of focus not even on chord progression anymore. We just kind of have one sound that sits on the bottom. It's very groove focused, very atmospheric focused. We get some more electronic sounds kind of pepper in around the area and pretty it up. But then from here, we kind of begin to explore a few different sounds that eventually leads us to a glitchy, semi-noisy section that's predominantly focused on this lead. I'm going to assume it's the modular synth going on there. Yeah, anyways, focusing on that, playing something melodic-ish. It's not really a true melody, but it does focus on shifting pitch with rhythmic changes, and the rhythmic elements come through not just in the cadence, but also the glitched elements there. So, and then this kind of takes us to the end, which brings us back to more of a simpler style of writing, more of a focus on ideas. And so across this less than 5 minute song, there's a good 5, maybe 6 distinct moments in it. That's definitely a progressive style of writing. But within most of these sections, it's sort of building up an idea. Sometimes there's more progressive elements within that. Sometimes it's just the idea. We're going to sit in it for a while. We're going to let the vocals go. And so, like I said, it kind of a little bit for everyone. If you like something that progresses, this song does it. It never really feels like it stagnates. If you like songs that just kind of build things up and sit within a specific framework, it does that quite frequently too. It certainly works really well on both fronts. Now, the instrumentation, though, does take a backseat to the song most of the time. We do have the synth at the end that plays something melodic and certainly takes the spotlight. But most of the time, the instrument that's in the lead is the vocals, and everything else creates the rhythmic elements, the groove, and the texture and atmosphere to the song. There might be a moving idea, such as the bass line at the beginning of the song, but like I mentioned, even when we got into the second section, the bass kind of reduced itself down to just a single pedal tone. We didn't even have chord progression through here. It just kind of creates this texture along with rhythmic flow, giving us our cadence and our groove. The vocals, though, are in constant flux. There's always a rhythmic shift up going on in the vocals. There's pitch shifting, changing pitches, playing or singing melodic lines. It's always on the move, always doing something interesting. It is in the spotlight, and it absolutely deserves it. It is, through most of these sections, the primary element of change in the song. What I found interesting, though, is where most of the instrumentation is happy, just creating the atmosphere for the vocals. The drums are almost like a dance partner to the vocals, constantly interpreting and playing around and supporting what the vocals are doing. Like I mentioned earlier, the drummer doesn't like to sit still. The drum groove, the drum pattern is in constant flux throughout this song, and so frequently it feels like it is in response to a stimuli that is the vocals, where the vocals will lay something down and the drums will adjust to match it. I find this to be very cool. One, because the drums don't usually get this. In most songs, the drums are secondary, they're rhythmic. There might be a melodic pattern to the drum work. The drummer does get a drum fill, every 16 bars or something. It's pretty typical in music. But very rarely do the drums get to play as a second lead instrument, especially when there's so much else going on. There's other melodic instruments. There's the bass. There's the textured synthesizer tones. There's the brass, the trombone in here. There's like so many more instruments that in any other band would be what gets paired with the vocals. And instead, this group says, we'll let the drums do it. And it's very cool watching this intricate dance between the two of them as the vocals shift up their flow and the drums play catch up and line back in with it. Sometimes there's a call and response thing where the vocals will lay down something new and the drums will interject in the two beats between vocal phrases. They'll just, put something in there, something rhythmic to complement what the vocals are doing and make sure that there is no dead air at all in the song. It's very interesting to listen to these two instruments sort of dance around with each other in a way that the drums just, like I said, they don't get to do very often in most bands. And I found that to be a very creative element here. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's nothing else going on around these two, but they are what's in the spotlight. That is where most attention is being given. And it's just very cool listening to a drummer change things up every other bar, keep things fresh on that rhythmic element. The rest of the instrumentation is already kind of playing the groove. They're playing the backbeat. They have the general rhythmic cadence going on. There's no chords to worry about, no melodies to worry about. You play your note in the rhythm. They're holding the beat down. It allows the drummer to be a bit more free. They're still usually playing the beat on the bass kick or on the cymbals or something, but with the snare, they're able to play around and dance around with what the vocals are laying down. And that is just such a cool sound throughout this. Now, most of the song is focused on this rather consonant harmony. Again, there's not a lot of harmonic movement throughout this track, but all of it is rather stable, whatever harmony they are playing, whatever chords they're playing. As we get closer to the end, we begin to see more and more dissonance, noisy elements. It's not just the harmonic dissonance either. There's also texture dissonance. There's harsher tones being used as we reach the climax of this track. I found this to be interesting simply because despite creating instability and harshness in the song, it doesn't overpower. It's always a spice, something that can be you can taste it, sure. It influences the dish, but it isn't overpowering. It complements it. And I find that that's generally what happens in this track. There's some microtonality going on, I think, on one of the synths in the background about halfway into the track. I commented on that in the reaction. Once the synth takes over as lead melody, it is glitchy and it is abrasive and it's scratchy and compressed. And then we have the vocals come in with that spiritual protection from evil. I don't remember what the line was, something along that. And then even that gets pushed over to a vocoder to still have those words being spoken, but in a more robotic way with some compression and grit and buzz on it. Buzz isn't normally a word I use for this kind of sound, but it seems fitting for an electronic description, whereas normally for guitar, I would call it, a fuzz or a distortion. But there's certainly some grittiness being applied to it. And it just seems as we get closer to the end, we reach these more gnarly tones. We have the two rises and falls. I really thought we were going to get a big drop after that first rise escalating idea. I was like, there's the drop. And then it wasn't. We reset. We built up again, though. Then we did have a drop. And we had a really cool, very groovy section to wrap the song up, very electronic, before kind of bringing back some of the older ideas for the outro. It's an interesting song, and it does a lot of things differently. I don't think any other band would have necessarily come into this conclusion here with the way that it pairs so many instruments, the ways that it pairs so many different inspirations and styles of music, the way that it lets the drummer do the spotlight, the way that it is almost a perfect middle ground between progressive style writing and more conservative style writing, just kind of focusing in on a specific tone and fully evolving it and exploring it. It does things that most bands don't, and I find that pretty cool. Let me hit some lyrics on this, and then we're going to wrap this one up. All right. Unfortunately, I can't track down most of the lyrics here. The English is just one phrase, spiritual, invisible, protection from evil. It's repeated, I don't know, probably 16, 20 times in this track. That part is what pretty much every website has. The rest of the song is sung in the Ibibio language, which I didn't know was a language. I went and looked this up. It's the native language of the Ibibio people of Nigeria. Unfortunately, none of the websites even have the words there for me to get a garbage AI translation from. And even on the official music video, I saw a couple of people asking for, if nothing else, even just by ear? What did you hear? If you speak the language, what words do you hear in the song? But there doesn't seem to be any documentation of the lyrical content that is in Ibibio. So I can't really do a lyrical dive on this. But I do think it's interesting that most of the languages we've had this week, European languages, right? We had French, we had German, we had Spanish in one of the songs too. Might be missing one, but here we have Ibibio. That's pretty cool. So it always fascinates me what types of music we can find within the community to listen to. I feel like I don't want to trash other communities, but this community is just very diverse, and I appreciate that. And this is pretty cool. I learned about a new language today. So even though we didn't get to do a lyrical dive, maybe y'all learned something as well as I did. That's going to wrap it up, though. These are my thoughts on Ibibio Sound Machine's Protection from Evil. What did you think of this track, though? Did you enjoy it? Did anything stand out to you? Is there anything you need to correct me on? Maybe I misspoke about. Do you have your own interpretation or opinion on this song? Please put all of that and any other thoughts you have down into the comments section below. Above that, if you could, head into the description box. You'll find a link to Linktree here. It takes you to this menu. I screwed up my entire cadence on this. Okay, takes you to this menu. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for this week's theme, but I will be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC. As usual, we're going to check out an entire album. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.